Hi, guys, and welcome to the That's Where I'm At podcast. Today I have Angie. Angie's an intuitive movement coach, advanced trauma-informed yoga instructor, a registered nurse, and stand-up paddleboard yoga instructor who understands the human body and how it works. She helps use play and movement to connect to their bodies, releasing stress, anxiety, depression, and trauma. After going from child abuse survivor to registered nurse to yoga instructor, she has spent much of her life caring for others. In 2017, she hit rock bottom and started on a journey to heal, discovering playful ways of using movements helped her learn to listen to her body, overcoming her suffering in ways traditional modalities could not. Now she helps others heal their pain, transforming their lives. Today she'll be telling us about how after surviving child abuse, she helps others heal their pain and transforming their lives. Welcome, Angie.
Thanks for having me, Laura. I'm so
I'm
excited.
excited too. I was so fascinated when we talked about this subject because it's something that I think I love. I've used so many different modalities in my healing this past year, and actually, really, in the last 7 years with some family trauma. And I'm always interested in new stuff because we don't know what we don't know, right? So I'm
Right.
so excited for you to talk about that. So, you've kind of told us, in just your intro, but tell me, like, how did you get into this? Tell me kind of like your journey of getting into this kind of line of work.
Yeah, it has not been linear. It's been all over the place.
Right.
Like
Literally and figuratively,
literally,
right?
yes. Quite frankly, I've lived all over the country. I have traveled quite a bit and also have been all over the place on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I am a registered nurse. So my story isn't actually linear, although I'm going to tell it that way.
Okay.
I experienced child abuse. It started when I was very, very young,
Mhm.
to the point where I actually had blocked out memories of it. It went for most of my childhood
Yeah.
and probably until around the time that I left for college. So many, many years of child abuse.
Yeah.
And I never, because I had blocked it all out, I never quite knew what was wrong, except I had what I called this black hole of pain inside of me,
Okay.
something that I just never could touch. I'd done therapy for it. And anytime I got too close to it, it just shut down.
Right.
I just had this black hole of pain.
Yes.
And I got married. I became a registered nurse. I was functioning like a productive member of society.
Right.
I did end up marrying an abusive man. So I was replaying some of my traumas in my marriage,
Yeah.
and finally got the courage to leave my husband when I was about 30. So that kind of started a journey for me to heal from the trauma of my marriage, which I kind of assumed was the only trauma that I had.
Right.
And once again, I had no memory of it. And then about 7.5, 8 years ago, I had been dating somebody, and once again repeating my pattern of some abuse from my childhood, and my partner was not the nicest, and I found out that they were cheating on me when they made a post on Facebook that they were with somebody new.
Oh my
So
gosh.
this
I'm so
betrayal,
sorry.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you. It was who I was. And now, granted, we hadn't been getting along, we'd been having some problems, but not, I did that I was not expecting that.
No.
And
And that
that,
seems very like a cowardly way to do something for
yes,
sure. I mean,
yes.
geez, give me a break.
And intentionally harmful. There's so many things about that.
Yes.
And what that did was that actually unlocked the memories of my child abuse. So
Really?
it did. That betrayal by this person that I was supposed to, or that I loved and cared about
Yeah.
and was supposed to love and care about
Right.
me, unlocked the memories of betrayal of my childhood experiences. So my abuse happened, it was friends of my parents, and it happened at
Okay.
church. So
Okay.
it was people who were supposed to love and
Right.
protect and care about
Protect
me.
you. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
So that betrayal unlocked the memories of my child abuse. So I started dealing with dueling traumas and having to process two pretty significant traumas and traumatic events.
Right.
And I hit rock bottom. I was not in a good place. I was starting to abuse alcohol. I was incredibly suicidal. I was thinking of self harm, and it just was a really bad place. And so
Right.
that really started my journey towards healing.
So
And
how
oh,
long when you were before you started your journey to healing, and you're in that rock bottom, whatever. Okay, so things are starting to come back to you, and were you doing anything else? were you doing anything or confiding in anyone, or were you just like, I just got to see if the solution's at the bottom of this bottle kind of thing, you know?
It's interesting. My partner and I, like I said, we hadn't been getting along, and I was starting to have some triggers and starting to be really activated. And I thought it was related to my ex-husband. So
Right.
I had actually already, I wasn't in therapy at the time. So prior to all that stuff happening with my partner, started seeing a therapist. I'd gotten scheduled with a therapist. And so I was in like my second session with this brand new therapist. Luckily, by the time that all this happened with my partner. And I wasn't really confiding in anybody. And I have been a nurse. I've been an ER nurse for many years. So
Right.
I have seen what happens when people use alcohol as a coping strategy. And so my nurse brain was screaming, danger. We don't want to go down this pathway. And so it was at that point where I opened up enough to my therapist, and I was with her actually when my memories of my child abuse started happening. We were trying to process some stuff that had happened with my partner. And then all of a sudden these memories of child abuse opened up, and she was the one that said, I think we need to get you some more help than right now than what.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so where did you go from there? What kinds of things did you start doing?
So I actually checked myself into an inpatient psychiatric unit that specialized in PTSD. I needed some really intensive help. I spent about a month there and learned some coping strategies. I was really struggling with these dueling traumas, and I laugh. It's not funny. Laughing is a coping strategy for me.
Of course, yes.
Um,
And we can
and
laugh here. It's okay. Look, I've laughed at some stuff because you just can't believe it happened. You can't believe you went through it. You can't believe, like for me, that I allowed certain things. I just have to laugh. And I'm okay because I've done a lot of healing. So I know that I'm laughing because I just can't even believe it.
yes, yeah, it almost is just mind boggling that
Yes.
what that actually happened.
That
Really?
happened. I allowed that or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After about a month of the inpatient unit, and they specialized in PTSD, so they had great resources and taught me some amazing tools to use when things got overwhelming. I checked myself out. I didn't need to be there anymore, and started working with my therapist pretty intensively. And I was also still working as a nurse, and that really became overwhelming. It got to be too much. So I decided to take a break. And around that time that I took a break, I needed something to do because if you can't tell by the way that I talk with my hands, I have a lot of energy, and not having something to do and not having something to occupy my mind was going to be a little too much.
Yeah.
And I practiced yoga for many years. I've done yoga for 20 plus years, and the studio that I practiced yoga at was offering a yoga teacher training. So I decided I was going to go just get a yoga teacher certification. And I loved it. I thought it was amazing. It was really kind of what I was looking for. It gave me some ability to be in my body. One of the things that was very challenging for me as I really started on this really intensive journey to heal was having any sort of sensory feelings in my body. It was so overwhelming and uncomfortable. And yoga gave me teaching yoga gave me a way to help kind of manage that in a way that felt safe and empowering for me.
Yeah.
Then when COVID hit, a friend of mine, another yoga instructor, told me that she was going to take a training on how to become a trauma-informed yoga instructor. And it's different. There's trainings and certifications that you can do for it. And trauma-informed yoga is different in that it provides a space for many different options. Languaging is different, cueing is different. Traditional yoga tends to be more structured. The best example that I can give is traditional yoga, whatever form you practice, typically moves with the breath. So on an inhale, you do this pose. On an exhale, you do that. On an inhale, you do this. And it's linked to the breath for there's very specific purposes with it. It's supposed to help you get its meditative state. Well, many trauma survivors, and I actually happen to be one of them, particularly sexually abused survivors, breath work is actually very triggering because it can bring you back to instances of breathing that you don't maybe necessarily want to go back to traumatic experiences. And so a cue that a trauma-informed yoga instructor would give would be something to the effect of moving with your breath or at whatever rhythm or pace that you want to, moving where you want to. So it's creating a space that's not so structured and yet still gives people the opportunity to tap into their bodies. And I loved it. That just like opened my world for me. It also, trauma-informed yoga languaging is much more exploratory. So notice, where do you feel it in your feet? Where do you feel it in your legs? If you don't feel it in your feet, what sensations are you feeling? So it's a much more exploratory, sensory, somatic is the word, experience, processing experience. So I was doing that. And one of the things that we learned in my trauma training is how powerful play is in helping people soothe their nervous systems. That actually was a module that we did. Play is something that helps get us into a state where our mind can shut off, we can separate from our trauma, and we can be in our sensory experiences without overwhelm or overload. So I was learning that at one time, and almost simultaneously, I was doing a process with my therapist. She had a protocol that was designed for people who had experienced trauma as a young child. And it was designed to help kind of rewire the brain. And what I learned is that all mammals, and humans are mammals, so we're included in that. We're born with our brains pre-wired with 7 circuits, meaning we come out as infants already with 7 circuits wired in our brain that we know how to do, or that help us navigate the world. So think of babies, think of puppies, and play is one of those circuits that we have. And so think of how babies learn, how puppies learn to navigate the world. It's through play. And it's called clearing the circuit, the protocol that my therapist did, but tapping into that wiring, that primal wiring that we have, and allowing play to become such a powerful part in my healing also really changed my my trajectory. Learning that we're born innately knowing how to play, and that's a valuable tool for us as humans, as mammals, to learn how to navigate our world. And that's how children's brains wire. It's an incredibly powerful tool for us to rewire as adults. And so learning about play in these 2 different arenas, I started incorporating play into my own healing. And so I would take a negative belief that I carry. And so one of them is that I'm small and I'm weak, which as a child, when you're being harmed by adults, that's a common belief. And so I had the belief that I'm small and I'm weak. And so I would pretend to stomp around my house like an elephant, and I didn't give a damn what was in my way. And so turning off my brain and allowing my body to experience the sensation of being a big elephant just really started to heal those negative beliefs. It allowed me to shift them and change them. And so I told a few friends about it, people who haven't experienced trauma to the degree that I have, just they've experienced normal life trauma, and they wanted to try it. So I did a couple of sessions for them, and it, same thing, worked wonders for them, this play. And so I've refined it, and now I coach people how using play and movement helps them to connect to their bodies in ways that feel safe, and then release these negative beliefs, change, rewire their brain, their body, and just have a more peaceful life.
That's amazing. So tell me what, you don't have to tell all your secrets, but tell me like what, like you were like, I'm stomping around like an elephant. And I totally get the concept, but how do you help someone, especially in our society, by the time we're adults, we're like, you're not supposed to play anymore. What are you doing? You know what I mean? And so how do you help people to tap into something to help them, like, are you individualizing things, or are you like, give me some sort of strategy that
Great question. Yes.
Okay.
So, I actually do it a couple of different ways. I have a group class that I offer, which is where I pick the theme. It usually comes from something that either I'm struggling with in my life or something that I'm hearing from my clients. And I'll design movements, and I'll coach people through how to play. That's actually really specifically what I do. And then when people want to work one-on-one with me and work on their own personal negative stuff and have something tailored specifically for them, then I tailor it specifically for them. I mean, I have my toolbox of moves that I'll tap into. And then, but a lot of times it's based on what someone will say to me. I was working with a client, And her negative belief was that she's unimportant, that she doesn't get to, she just is unimportant. So anything she wants isn't valuable. And I was kind of asking her some questions about that. And I was suggesting, let's be elephants. And she said, oh, I want to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And so all of a sudden we were Tyrannosaurus Rexes stomping around the house.
Yeah.
And so once I create that space where people can start to allow their creativity to flow, then it really starts to be tailored specific to them. I was working with one client who felt like she needed to get away. Everything was so bad, she needed to get away, and she related to butterflies. So we pretended to be a caterpillar climbing out of a cocoon and then flying away. And so it really does, when I do the one-on-one lessons, it's very tailored specifically to somebody and their individual needs. But my group class, I'll create stuff based on things I'm working with clients, things I'm feeling, and that kind of stuff.
And I like the way you say you create the space for that. And I'm guessing it's a safe space, because that's really important. Because especially people who have been hurt, right? Where you've been in situations where you're like, I'm going to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And people are like, well, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Right. But you are facilitating this environment where it's like, this is safe. I wanted you to be an elephant. This may sound ridiculous in general, right? I want you to be an elephant. I'm going to be a T-Rex instead. You know what I mean? And so I'm so glad to hear you saying that it's a safe place or safe space. And I'm guessing too, you facilitate that whole situation in a group setting as well.
Yes.
People aren't going, that's ridiculous or whatever, because sometimes that can happen as a way to deflect from our pain and all those things, right?
Yes. And I'm going to say, people actually say that to me even when we're in a session. They're like, I'm not going to be a T-Rex. And I'll say, okay, well, just try it. Like, just put your arms up and see what it feels like. Just put your arms up.
Well, because they probably do have that belief, right? That, well, that seems weird, and she might make fun of me if I do even act like a T-Rex, right?
Yes.
But we all need those places where we can be safe, even to try new things like this, right? Because you never know how it's going to make you feel. You never know what it's going to do. Sometimes we just got to do it.
And one of the things I do is I actually do it with my clients, because you know how when someone wants you to do something and they're watching you and you feel like you're putting on a show, oh, it's so uncomfortable. Right. So I'll start stomping around, and I'll notice that a lot of times my clients will kind of take little steps. They won't really do much. And then as they see me just kind of full on flailing in whatever it is that we're doing, they start to feel more comfortable letting go. And it's interesting. Two things that are really opening and soothing to our nervous systems are our nervous system likes things that are rhythmic and repetitive. So even stomping around like a T-Rex, if you have your little T-Rex arms on, it's rhythmic and repetitive to pick one leg up and stomp it down, pick one leg up and stomp it down. And so as you start to do that, your body just starts to open up and relax. And then all of a sudden you're able to run around, and the rhythmic, repetitive movements are soothing, and they also allow our bodies to rewire and release that buildup of energy. So anything that at first it might be nothing, like a little tiny move, all of a sudden
hesitant. Yeah. That's so interesting. So I was trying to see some of the notes from what we had talked about before. I do want you to give an example, because of when we talked about you were giving swaying examples as a way to really engage with what's going on with your body, because I thought it was so fascinating. I loved it. And I thought, even if you're listening to this in the car, you're going to be able to do this, because it's going to be don't take your hands off the wheel, but you're still going to be able to do it. And I really thought it was interesting, because it's really going to help people understand kind of what you are trying to tap into, because I loved it. Like in 5 seconds, I was like, what? That's great.
So like I said, I teach and coach people how to listen to the cues that their bodies are giving them. So I don't instantly put someone into stomping around like a T-Rex, because there needs to be a buildup of that person's own internal sense of safety and knowing that they're safe in their body. So some of the things that I do as I start to warm clients up, especially if they're new to me, is we start to learn what and how to interpret the signals that your body is giving you. And so a sway, like Laura
Yes.
mentioned, is one of the
Yes.
best ways. So I'm going to invite y'all to do it with me. Once
Yep.
again, if you're driving, keep your hands on the wheel,
That's right.
but you can do this otherwise. And you can do
I'm
it
gonna do it.
seated, you can do it standing, you can do it to
Okay.
however degree you want. Once again, this is all about you exploring what your body's saying. So start with the side to side sway. And just start. So I'm going to invite you to do it with us. For those of you watching the video, you can see Laura and I doing
Yep.
it. If you're listening, just notice and start to check in with what's happening with your shoulders, check in with what's happening with your gut. We carry a lot of tightness in our gut when we're tense.
Yes. Yeah.
Check in with what's happening with your toes. When we're tense, we have a lot of gripping in our toes. Now start to go front to back. And as you go front to back, Laura, I don't know if you just noticed your shoulders went up and your chin tucked in a little bit.
It's not as good for me to go front to back.
Front to back. So we all have one direction that feels comfortable and soothing and one that creates some discomfort in our body. So if front to back is uncomfortable, totally fine, still do it. Start to notice what those cues are. Like I said, shoulders hunching up, what happens to your gut, what happens with your toes.
My toes, I notice. It's so funny how you say that.
And you notice your toes are digging in.
Yes.
And hold on for dear life.
Yes. That's so interesting.
Now go back to whichever sway is more comfortable for you. For me, it is side to side. For Laura, it sounds like side to side. Many of my clients, it is front to back. So really it's about what's most soothing for you.
Interesting.
And so noticing which one does your shoulders all of a sudden relax. When I start to do side to side, I feel like my body becomes fluid and liquid. And so there's just this openness with it. And yet when I go front to back, I'm just this ball of nerves and tightness. And so even something simple like this side to side, front to back sway gives you so much information of what your body is trying to tell you. And as you start to tap into that more and more, that's actually generally homework I give my clients after the first time I've seen them, is to just keep doing that front to back, side to side sway and starting to become familiar with what those body cues are that your body is telling you, no, this doesn't feel good. I'm in tension versus I'm cool and relaxed.
Yes. And one of the things that we talked about that I thought was really fascinating that I'd love for you to touch on is, you and I were talking about what I was telling you when I first started playing pickleball.
Yes.
That I liked it. And then it became, oh, come join this league and come join this competition. And I'm like, I just want to move my body on the court and hit a ball around and play pickleball. I don't want to compete. And you were saying that there's a difference between playing and then like being in a competitive league or something. So talk a little bit about that, how, what happens with that.
Yeah. So as we become adults, our play becomes competitive. Thinking playing sports, playing instruments, playing games. There's a winner and a loser, or there's a definite end goal when we play as adults, and it's a very finite.
Like almost like we're not allowed to play unless we're in a league competing or something.
Unless there's a competition involved with it. Yeah.
You're just going over there and playing basketball. That doesn't make sense. Well, yes, it does if it feels good to just go and play a pickup game. Well, I mean, that's still competition, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
So the term, the way that I use it is that there needs to be no purpose to doing it other than the sheer joy of doing it. Yes, when I work with my clients, the goal is to, start to kind of reverse those negative beliefs and change them. And yet, it is being done really for kind of the joy, just starting to learn how to be in our bodies for the pure joy of being in our bodies. So play, typically, when I use the term play, I really use it in a way that there is no set outcome for what's going to happen. It's not competitive. There is no, I win, I lose. It's more about the exploration of, what did I experience along the way? Kind of like when you wanted to just play pickleball, it was, you just wanted to experience hitting the ball and have fun and no real outcome, I'm assuming.
Right.
Once it takes that competitive angle to it, it loses the definition of play in the way that I'm using it, in the way that is this healing therapeutic modality.
Right. And so when you're talking about play, is it really anything? Can it also be art and things like that? Are you, like any kind of things like that? Because sometimes you get into a craft and people are like, you should sell that. Now we've already we've messed it up.
Yes. Yes, I think so. Play for me is anything that taps into your creativity and allows you to experience something for the pure joy of experiencing it. So yes, crafting, if that brings you joy, the hesitation I have with crafting is so often we become hypercritical of ourselves. If you make a mistake, is that going to derail you and send you down that negative pathway? Color, a lot of times people will say coloring because coloring, they're, I mean, we're adults, we stay in the line. If you don't stay in the line, you don't stay in the line. Okay, great. I did have someone ask me one time what I thought about playing video games. Did that count as play? And it was some sim building game we're talking about. And for me, because play and movement are so closely linked, I even say anything that's going to take you into just your mind and take you out of your body is probably not going to give you the same benefit of what I'm talking about. The idea of this play and movement linked together is to get you into your body, into sensations in your body in ways that feel safe. And so if you're doing something that's an intellectual component and you're disconnected from your body, that sort of defeats the purpose of being in your body to learn what those signals your body is sending you.
Like dancing and things like that.
Yep. Dancing is a big one I personally do because it's fun. I know we had talked about that. You enjoy dancing. And not everybody does. A lot of people that I work with feel uncomfortable just like free form dancing. And so they do need instruction to learn how to play. So just wherever you are in the gamut is what I'm saying is completely normal. It's totally normal wherever you are on that in terms of how comfortable you are with letting your body move.
Well, it's even, dancing. I don't do it out in public usually or whatever. It's not something I do, but I love doing it at home, just jumping around or whatever, or throw on a video that I see. I don't know, if I see a dance move in a video, I'm like, I want to learn how to do that just for fun. To be like, okay, my body's creaking or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm listening to my body, Angie. But I just so enjoy it. It's like I have to do nothing with this information. I don't have to post it. I remember people were like, "Are you going to post it?" I'm like, "Why am I posting a video of me dancing? I just want to dance. Like it just feels good, to do that." So, I don't remember. I don't know what I wrote here. So you're just going to have to keep moving forward. Something about chronic stress. I don't know what I put. Psychological. Chronic, I don't know, so we can skip that part. Just
I was gonna say I can talk about chronic stress. That is one of the things that I talk about. Chronic stress actually can and regularly does turn into trauma for most of us. So the hand brain model is something that is a fantastic way of learning what happens in our body and why play and movement are so helpful for trauma, like child abuse, domestic abuse, that kind of stuff, as well as the chronic stress. So I think we talked about this, that you told me to save it for this, the hand brain model.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So the hand brain model is a tool that is designed or was designed by a psychologist by the name of Dr. Dan Siegel. And let me just tell you, this was designed for children. And this is by far the easiest way that I have found to understand what happens in our body when we're in stress. So feel free, you're welcome to do this with me. You're welcome to watch. So taking your hands, folding your thumbs into the palms of your hands, and then wrapping your fingers, the other four fingers down on top of those. And then bringing your two hands together. This represents your brain, our brain, all of our brains. We have two halves to our brain. The right side of our brain controls the left side of our body, and the left side of our brain controls the right side of our body. Structurally, the two halves are relatively similar. They do different functions, but structurally, they're pretty much the same. So we're going to imagine cutting our brain in half. So we're going to look at one wrist, one hand, because I use my other hand to talk. Now, the top four fingers that you have wrapped over your thumb, this is the rational thinking part of our brain. So this is the top. This is called the cortex. This is when we're in our rational brain. This is how we make connections, thought processes. And just as a side note, this doesn't fully form until we're about age 25. That's why 25 is the age for people to rent cars. Some people, it doesn't fully form until age 30. So up until then, this is still really forming.
Yeah, we're getting married before then.
Right. 21. Yep. Clearly mine was not formed at that point.
Mine wasn't either. I was 23. I didn't have a fully formed brain.
No. And that also explains why when we get married so young, we change so much because our brain is still growing and changing, that by the time we get to be 28, 30, we're almost entirely different people because our brain is still growing. So anyway, I'm not saying do or don't get married at a young age. Just
exactly.
Fully formed age 25 on average. So then lifting up the top fingers, the thumb that's in the center of the palm, this is our emotional part of our brain. This is what's called the limbic system. This is where our fear center is. This is where also our memory center is really close to this limbic center. They're really closely attached. So when we're in our emotional brain, so when we're in the center of our thumb, we're not in our thinking brain. And when we're in our thinking brain, we're not in our emotional brain. And then if you actually come down here to the wrist, this is what's considered the brain stem. And this is what controls basic functions of our life, like our breathing, our heart rate, all of that kind of stuff. The center of our thumb is where, when we go into that, we typically go into what's called fight or flight. That's when our nervous system gets amped up, we get activated, and our body is starting to prepare to run or to fight. Let's back up. We'll bring the fingers down on top. So we're walking around everyday life. We're in our normal rational brain. So the fingers are engaged. We're thinking, we're in our rational brain. And let's say a tiger starts coming up on us. Something happened, some sort of a threat, a tiger coming up on us. We're going to do what's called flip our lid. So we no longer are in our rational thinking brain. We're now purely in our emotional brain, our fight or flight, or our limbic system. And when we're in this limbic system, our bodies are actually producing chemical messengers, hormones, stress hormones, adrenaline, our heart rate increases, cortisol is released, sugar's released. Our body's getting us ready to run or to fight, and actually physically getting us ready. So think about when you're in a really stressful situation, what's happening? You tense up, we tend to get tunnel vision, your mouth dries, all of your blood is going to your muscles, getting you ready to run or to fight. The same thing happens with chronic stress. This is where chronic stress ties into it. So if we're in a chronic state of stress, we start to actually disconnect our rational thinking brain more and more and more, because we're just building up more of these stress hormones. They're just getting more and more built up. And so it takes a smaller trigger for us to flip our lid. If we stay in this state for a long period of time and we don't get a release of these stress hormones, or if what we do, which we as humans do regularly, we stuff those feelings down. We don't want to feel them, so we stuff them down. We'll either eat our feelings, we'll, zone out, we'll try and bring our rational brain back online so that we don't have to feel the discomfort of being in here. If this gets too overwhelming, so being in the limbic system, being in the center of our palm gets too overwhelming, we're going to move down into the brain stem, which is the freeze portion of our nervous system. This is where we shut down. You don't get out of bed for days. You binge watch Netflix. It's like, I give the example of the freezing goats. You freeze and then you fall over. But we as humans, we're more sophisticated than that. We don't necessarily freeze and fall over. We're going to not get out of bed, or we're going to watch Netflix. We're going to completely check out and not even engage into any sort of sensory anything. The healthiest way for us to get our rational brain back online is to come back through the fight or flight system, release that buildup of energy, and then that brings our rational brain back online. So same thing with chronic stress. We need to find ways to release that buildup. Chronic stress is also releasing all of those stress hormones. And so we're just amping ourselves up. It's like always pushing on the gas on a car and never, and being in neutral and never letting off. And so that's just this whirling tornado of energy. And so if we just keep bypassing that, not releasing it, we're just stuffing all of that down inside of us. And so it's going to take something smaller and smaller to make us blow our lid. It's like a pressure cooker. So when we add movement and play, and this is why I'm such a big proponent of movement and play and movement give us the opportunity to release that fight or flight energy in a way that's not actually taking us into that stress. So like I said, stomping around like an elephant, you get to slam your body down into there, you get to feel the sensation of being a big elephant. You're not a human having to deal with recovering from whatever it is, or dealing with the stressors of money, your life, or whatever it is. You're an elephant, and you get to stomp down and feel it. And so it's this way to step back from our daily life in order to release that flight or flight energy to come back into our rational thinking brain.
And are you finding that people, because my gosh, I feel like I'm still stuck. My body is still stuck after 33 years of chronic stress.
Yes.
So are you finding success with that even after long periods of time with people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I found it both with myself.
Yeah.
My abuse happened 30, 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I still find that residual tension in my body. A lot of my clients that I work with, usually when working with trauma, and once again, I think all of us have trauma. So even chronic stress for
Right.
me, I use that term as trauma.
Yes.
Usually when working with trauma, you work at the most superficial layer or the most recent layer, and then you delve down. And as you start to get down into the deeper layers, it can become more uncomfortable. And there's also, I find with my clients, a bigger release as we get that trauma out, because your body's just like, I don't want this anymore. Get rid of it, get rid of it, get rid of it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, we'll definitely be playing then.
Yeah.
You do. Because, and I think that, how people are traditionally advised is, reduce your stress, right? Like, whatever, have somebody help you with whatever you're dealing with. But it's like, sometimes you might need more than that. That doesn't always help. Like, I really, in general, in my life, I don't have a lot of stress, but I think there's leftover stuff that's just sitting in there, right?
That black hole of pain, like what
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't know what it even would look like or sound like, or how you tell people to listen, but it's like sometimes it just feels like what we call anxiety or whatever, right? But it's like, yeah, anxiety, I get it. But sometimes I'm like, God, I just need to get rid of this. I mean, I was traumatized for 33 years, so of course, it's sitting in there, even though I'm trying to get it out. But it's why I feel so good when I'm like out for a walk and hiking and stuff like that,
That's where the play becomes so powerful, because our rational brain is trying to understand the logic of it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
our rational brain is going to limit us 100% of the time.
Yes, exactly.
So when we can find ways to turn that off, your body is going to give you the information when you start learning how to listen to it, of how to release it. So like we talked about the side to side sway, that's information that your body's telling you, shoulders up versus shoulders down, gut clenched versus gut unclenched.
Yeah.
And as you start to find those movements, a lot of times people will also say, use breath work, go in and take some deep breathing.
Yeah.
And sometimes what you need instead to do is throw a temper tantrum, scream and kick and run in place, because you have that buildup of energy to do the breathing. And breath work 100% works. It actually will switch us into our nervous system that's called our rest and digest, or our parasympathetic nervous system. But sometimes you need to get that energy out. And so when we switch into that rest and digest, we're not releasing that energy. So what I tell people is, I call it a screaming meditation. Take a deep breath in. So you get if you want to work with breath, if breath doesn't work for you, do it at whatever rhythm you want. Take a deep breath in or whatever. And then as you breathe out, scream, kick, stomp your feet, throw a temper tantrum, because then you get the soothing inhale breath, and then you get to just release that energy. I actually had one client that I had her do that before she went to sleep every night, because she wasn't sleeping very well. And even just that simple act of doing that for like 3 minutes, she said she's never slept so well. And it's that getting that energy out. That's not something that we are really taught. In fact, we're taught to stuff it down.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I say throw a temper tantrum like you're a 2-year-old. Make it as big as you want. And I call it a screaming meditation. Say a swear word. I usually, when I do it, will drop the F-bomb, because that just makes me feel better. Say as many as you want.
Better. It makes me feel better too, for sure. Well, and you're right. I think we are taught, like all these emotions are okay, and then anger or screaming or whatever is not okay. And it's like, we're not trying to do it to anyone, though if your partner's asleep and you scream, that might be
You
I'll
know,
have
be a
to
little
I'll have
conscientious.
to warn my cat and maybe scream into my pillow or something. But it's such a good idea, and these are, I just love it. I love that you've given us so many different ways to look at things, because I've been trying so many different things, because we all need so many different things in our toolbox.
Yes.
This, therapy works and this works. I've been doing so many different things. I'm enjoying really getting to know, because we have to try it before we know, well, this didn't work for me. Okay, fine. Or it did work for me, or it doesn't have to be the end all, right?
Right.
It's another tool in our toolbox, and I just love it. So I just love that you give us hope for healing, even though it's been a long time. If we have if we have stuff from a long time ago, I know that if not everyone was abused in their childhood, right? But you're right. We've all been through something in our life, and we might be holding on to things. Our body might be holding on to things that we don't even realize,
Mhm.
and we're holding on to it. Might as well put it down. Might as well find a way to
Let
put
it
it
go. Yeah,
let it go. And we could even sing and dance to let it go. And
exactly.
we really could. I remember one time I was at a conference, and it was just a lot of seriousness. And so when we came back from lunch, they put Taylor Swift's Shake It Off song
Yes.
on for no other reason other than they said, let's all dance. And I danced the entire 3-4 minutes, and it was so much. And my friends were like, wow. And I was like, I felt so good. It just,
Okay, do you want me to let you in on a little secret?
okay.
Okay, this is I'm a nurse, so scientifically, I'm all about understanding the science behind it and nervous systems. So animals out in the wild have traumatic experiences, but they don't develop PTSD or
Okay.
residual stress like humans do to the same degree that we do. And the reason is because after animals in the wild have had a traumatic experience, they'll shake it off. They actually do this shake off, or it's called discharge of energy. And it's that release of the fight or flight energy. So, if you've ever watched like a lion chase a gazelle on the Serengeti Desert,
Right.
and the gazelle gets away, they'll freeze. Like once they're done, they like go into their freeze. And then when they get up, they just start shaking. They shake their limbs, they shake their arms, their
Yes.
legs, their body.
Yes.
And that's that discharge of energy. So Taylor Swift's Shake It Off is one of my favorite songs, because that Shake It Off, I actually have a move that I call Jello Wiggle, which is to try and get as much wiggle and
I
wiggling
was like
body. Yeah.
shaking, like I was shaking my hand. I mean, it seriously, it was so good. And it was funny that this person put that on to really just like break the tension, and it was great. We were all laughing, we were having the best time, and there was no agenda. We weren't performing. There was no agenda. We were just shaking it all off. It was great. Shaking off the whatever.
And that is a nervous system reset. So
That's
do it.
amazing. Okay.
There's scientifically proven research that shows why that is so beneficial.
That's so awesome. So, tell us how we can get a hold of you, or where people can find you so that we can work with you.
Yes, absolutely. The best
And we'll
way.
put all this in the show notes as well.
Okay. The best way is through my website, which is angieberrettmovement.com. And I
Okay.
do spell my last name Berrett. So
Okay.
angieberrettmovement.com. And it has links to all my social medias where I do post some of these moves, suggestions for things that you can
Yes.
try. It has my email, my phone number. And if you want, I do have a free guide that talks more about how trauma
Yes.
impacts our body and gives you some moves to start to tap into learning the language of your body. So my website is the
And
best
I
way.
think you provided that link as well,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, okay, so great. So check the show notes, because she's providing you guys a free guide for that. And thank you for doing that. That's really appreciated. That's so helpful. Thank you so much for being here. It has been so informative. Another tool for our toolbox to help us heal after traumatic events, even if you don't think you have any. Um,
Chronic stress is a traumatic event.
Chronic
Yes.
stress. I'm afraid that we all have it. So, well, thank you so much. And guys, if this has resonated with you today, or if you found it fascinating, or anything else you'd like to tell us, please go to social media and comment on Angie's posts, because we always want to know. And of course, like, follow, share, leave us an Apple review, all the things so that out in podcast land, they know that you want to hear more information from That's Where I'm At podcast. Angie, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Laura. Bye, everybody.